last Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of 2015. So with that, I'll open the meeting. Just a reminder, everyone, to have your cell phones turned off, please. And welcome to our online viewers. I have apologies from Councillor Young, Councillor Martin Gallagher, who will be leaving part of the meeting to attend the funeral of a civic award, I believe.
Mr. Jim Holden.
Mr. Jim Holden, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Wilson for lateness, and Councillor Mallett has to leave around 3 p.m. Are there any other apologies? No, so with that, I'll move those apologies. Seconded by...
Sorry,
oh,
given for lateness. Yeah, no, you got
yeah, I said that, yeah. And there any other... Oh, sorry, so I've moved that. A seconder. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda to accommodate Councillor Gallagher having to step out to attend that funeral. I'd like to move item 12 to after item 16.
Yes.
So he can be, he's going to try.
By any chance I'm not back, although people assure me it's going to be a long meeting, I'm happy about that.
Have they? Good.
But if by any chance I'm not back, then Councillor Tooman would just present that report on my behalf.
All right,
in the absence of Mr. Councillor Young.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So that item 12 to come after item 16. So I'll move that agenda be confirmed. Seconder? Anyone? Thank you, Councillor Mallett. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. And, okay, so we have 3 speakers in the public forum today. First one up is Thomas Gibbons. Thomas is representing the Property Council New Zealand. So welcome, Thomas. Hi. And you have 3 minutes to speak, and the democracy will ring the bell at 2 minutes, just to let you know that your time's nearly up. So thank you.
Thank you, kia ora koutou. Thomas Gibbons, Branch President, Property Council. What we want to urge you to do today is turn the Central City Transformation Plan into action. That's why I'm here. It needs to be properly resourced, so it's not a bottom drawer plan, and so it's not a cosmetic change plan. Let's make it an action plan. Property Council has put forward its own plan for the CBD based on Hamilton City Council being an informed enabler, helping things to happen, empowering a CBD board, empowering an economic development agency, and having the right research done. We kept our plan deliberately high level because we want to get the structure right and the strategy right rather than being ad hoc about the CBD. Clearly the CCTP has the overwhelming support of submitters. What we need is the same commitment from Council so it doesn't gather dust. Commitment from Council doesn't mean Council has to do everything. There's a strong commitment from others, business, developers in the community. But Council can go further with the private sector. A good empowered CBD board could be more flexible and innovative about things like parking, mobile shops and garden place. We see the success of other organisations elsewhere, similar organisations in enhancing amenity. Council does need to come to the party with funding, otherwise I think the effort that's been done to date on the CCTP becomes a waste of time. It becomes a city scope. But a good CBD board can be more innovative, again around philanthropy, parking revenue, collecting and keeping its own, drawing on the endowment fund perhaps, looking at rating differentials more seriously. But the point is getting the structure right, handing over a bit of responsibility is the right way to go. The CBD is absolutely a critical part of our city and our community. But it's time to have some action and commitment to it. There are a lot of different ways to get started, but let's have some boldness, some leadership and some action so it goes to the next step. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Questions, Councillor McPherson?
Yeah, thanks. I'm pleased to see the Property Council here supporting this move. In the past, we've had submissions from your organisation sharply criticising Council for spending anything except on stormwater, roads, rubbish, what some people would regard as the core business. What sort of contributions would your members be looking to put into by way of, say, increased rates? I understand your point about the private sector coming to party, but you're also saying Council will need to put forward funding as well.
Yes, so the question there is...
Is what sort of contribution would your members be willing to contemplate, let's say, by way of increased rates or levies to fund something like this?
Yeah, good question. I don't have the detail with me about that, but certainly something we can canvass with them.
You're not opposed to the concept, though?
Well, I think there's targeted rates in the CBD already in various things and targeted rates of various kinds, so those things can be
So just
used.
on the CBD properties, you'd think the levy should be, or should it be on the whole city?
So can you both use your microphones?
Apologies.
Sorry.
The benefit from the Central City Transformation Plan would accrue wider than just a CBD.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so would you support a lot of your members are not in the CBD, they've got property spread around the city, so would they, is that the feedback you're getting from your members?
Oh, look, fundamentally I'll answer that no one likes paying more rates, but there's a recognition of the need to have a commitment from council to it, and that has a range of ways of being funded.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Millett.
Thank you. Thanks, Thomas. Hey, why do you think a job or a business in the CBD should be preferential to a job or a business elsewhere in the city?
We're not saying a job or a business in the CBD needs to be preferred as such. What we're saying is council should show some acknowledgement of the importance of the CBD to the city.
Oh, okay. So why would the CBD be more important than other? I guess that was the concept of what I was
So
asking.
I think if you went out to the community generally, you'd find that people see the CBD as a critical, important part of the city. It's simply, every part of the city is important, but some parts are more important than others.
If that were the case, they would be here, wouldn't they?
Excuse me?
If that were the case, they would be here. If it wasn't by important, I assume the shops are good, or my job is good, or I live in the CBD. If that were the case, they would simply vote with their feet and their pocketbooks.
They being... Sorry,
The people that you said would think that the CBD is important, that those same people would already be here, wouldn't they? Or they'd be...
And at times they are. At other times not.
Yeah, but clearly they're not here enough, or else the CBD would be booming and bustling and there would be no need for a CBD transformation plan.
That sounded more like a comment than a question.
No. If that were the case, would there be a need for a CBD transformation plan?
No, I would say that there's ways that council can enable more of a sense of community about the CBD. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Last questions to Councillor King.
Your council has talked about our council injecting $50 million into your area, into our area. Can you elaborate on that a bit for us, please?
Yeah, so the thinking behind a sum of money is that if you go back over things like cityscope plans in the past, there's a lot of times at which council has sat down and said something needs to be done and has then done nothing. There's no point in having this plan done without some commitment behind it. Now, 50 million is a figure. To show boldness, you could have a different figure. You could have a lower figure, you could have a higher figure. But unless there's some real commitment to doing something, we'll just have another document that sits in a gathering dust somewhere.
All right, thank you very much, Thomas.
Thank you.
All right, next up in the public forum is Sandy Turner, representing the Hamilton Central Business Association. Welcome, Sandy. You know the drill.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I'm also going to be speaking about item 11. So we currently have a CBD that once served its purpose well, but over time and due to many mitigating factors has become old, tired and run down. We do have glimpses of possibility by some bold, innovative new builds and refurbishments that provide a fresh and exciting feel in pockets around the city. And we congratulate those developers and business owners who have invested millions into our CBD and for being the trailblazers. With each new building or renovation, we see a complete change to the immediate surrounds, a renewed tenancy interest, a sense of pride and a general feeling of optimism that our city has huge potential to be a prosperous commercial centre with a vibrant metropolitan lifestyle. It also creates a good story that we can share to help change the perception of Hamilton outside this region that does not do great for this city's justice. We all want to live in a city that we can be proud of, and particularly of our brand, Hamilton. It's measured by the heart of the city as the first impression for visitors coming to our city. We need and want to be competitive with other regions as many businesses, investors and residents look to relocate outside of Auckland due to their current challenges, and it's never been a better time. The economic value of having a plan that enables investors, developers, retailers and property owners, including council, to work together around a common vision is the starting point, and we now feel we have a council that understands the value of a growing and competitive environment and is making enormous efforts to be an enabler. Our also key priorities are around funding, current work budgets within Hamilton City Council, and most importantly to ensure that they are working within the new blueprint and that it's not just business as usual. An example being the recent upgrading and beautification of Victoria Street road planting, which didn't cost taxpayers any extra, but a bit of extra time and thought and planning went in so that the look and feel incorporated what had been put inside the plan. That's a fantastic start, and we urge all departments within council to consider this. Can I keep going?
You've got 1 more minute.
Okay. We really look forward to a detailed commitment to a work plan going forward into 2016. And I'd also like to comment briefly on the gateway policy. Having been part of this discussion over the past 18 months, we are pleased to see we now have a good draft policy completed. This draft policy has had contribution from a large and diverse working group who represents the many and varied stakeholders, and it should be a priority to finally get this signed off. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Councillor Mallett?
Thanks, Sandy. Why should we as the council take money from residents or businesses in Rotorua to assist businesses or residents in the CBD?
So, Gary, that's never been Hamilton Central Business Association's viewpoint. It was never put into our submission. We don't have an expectation like that across the board. We believe that stakeholders who are directly going to benefit should be the contributors, and we're currently looking at surveying our own members around their appetite to have an increased targeted rate, and that's part of a whole process that we're working through. But I do believe that everybody in Hamilton wants to have a city that they're proud of, and I also believe that they see a value of having a very strong heart. And I think that, you know, the comments you made before to the Property Council speaker were relevant. However, you know, just having a ballpark figure like 50 million or, you know, it's got to be project driven and there has to be a direct benefit. I think if people are asked to contribute and they believe in the project, I think we'll have a much better appetite. And I think there's opportunities within the Central City Transformation Plan to pick out key projects and get some really good investor contributions.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Sandy. Thank you. Right, our final public forum speaker is Aaron Wong from Generation Zero Incorporated, and he's also speaking on the CCTP item 11. Welcome, Aaron. You have 3 minutes. The bell will ring at 2, and then you've got a final minute after that.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the City Centre Transformation Plan. I'd mainly like to echo the comments that were made by Thomas from the Property Council and by the Hamilton Central Business Association. This plan is bold and it is very important, especially for a city centre which for now has been in decline for quite a while. Obviously we're seeing a bit of regeneration there with the Victoria Street planting, which I think is excellent. And to sort of bring this to where my organisation comes from, we're an organisation that is trying to find mitigation measures for climate change, which is very pertinent at the moment. And where this fits in with us is that a city centre and this urban living is a very important part of reducing our carbon emissions. Being able to centralise those resources and provide vibrant spaces improves both livability and energy resilience. The situation that we have at the moment in Hamilton is we have a very, very large footprint of the CBD. We also have a lot of sprawl, and that is not really conducive to operating better public transport networks. And certainly one of the comments that we made for the city centre transformation plan is that it needed to be integrated with the other major plan at the moment, which is the biking plan. Certainly having a city centre which is strong means that you can have more, more efficient pathways, especially for public transport and for roading as well. At the moment we have a sort of disproportionate distribution of travel patterns, and as we can see that leads to a lot of congestion. So certainly having the higher density living up, I think it's in the Victoria Quarter, will be excellent, as well as having, if you have that large employment centre in the city centre and you have the residential there as well, you reduce a lot of trips, and certainly that will bring a lot more vibrancy to the city centre, which will hopefully give us a much better image both nationally and internationally if we want to continue with the development that has been happening.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Question from Councillor Millett.
Thanks, Aaron. Your concept of bringing people from the suburbs into the CBD, doesn't it contradict with your issue with regard to carbon? The current situation, I think, in just the area I know reasonably well, sort of Rototuna, you've got big shopping centres there, you've got the base, you've got movie theatres within close, there's restaurants, all this stuff. Surely you're better off having people walking to the restaurant or walking to the shopping centre or riding their bike to the shopping centre than coming all the way into town.
Well, I mean, that would work quite well if actually everything was accessible to everyone. But the situation is the biking infrastructure and just the natural distribution of where these shopping centres and employment centres are not really close to where people live. And I mean, in most cities, you have a very, very dense city centre and you have people living there and you have a lot of commercial and commercial activity. So, you know, what they usually do overseas is you have high-quality public transport links, busways and railway lines, and we don't really have that density at the moment to justify that. But arguably, if we're going to be a world-class city, we need to look around internationally, and certainly the key thing of most vibrant cities is they're not having, you know, out-of-town shopping centres and just factories all around the place. You centralise them, and certainly we've got the industrial centre at Te Rapa. But what you see at the moment is you see a lot of traffic heading to that western part, and the traffic isn't, there isn't that much of an employment centre in lots of other places. So we need to sort of rationalise and do more planning in regards to where we develop. And certainly, I mean, what's worked overseas is to have high-quality public transport links from the outer suburbs into the city centre. And if you use buses or other low-emission vehicles, that can be provided very efficiently with very low impact on the environment.
But those people are currently working or shopping locally.
Well, I wouldn't really call it locally.
They're happy to do that. The only reason they're coming to town is because you're telling them to come into town.
No, that's not true. I mean, the situation, what's drawing them over there is because money has been invested. I mean, the base didn't just spring up overnight. It required a lot of investment on behalf of Tainui Group Holdings. So arguably you can look at the city centre and go, well, have the council invested here, and perhaps have they not invested enough? So certainly you need to provide good quality to attract people in. And I mean, I've walked around the city centre, and we do have a problem. We have many shops that are for lease, and that's not a good look. So there needs to be a big shift there, and I think the city centre transformation plan is a really good action towards that. It's got the vision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Aaron, for your presentation. I just would like a little bit more context around Generation Zero and what that group is, how many, what sort of demographic, how old is the organisation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, once again, with Generation Zero, we're a youth-led climate action organisation. We're working towards a more sustainable future, and a lot of that comes from a lot of expertise we have in transport. So we talk a lot about more efficient transport, and certainly we've had some big wins in the Auckland City, where the Auckland Council provided a budget that would either require a big ramp up in funding, or one which compromised a lot on public transport projects, and we actually presented an alternative budget there, which was pretty much adopted. Yeah, so we work on transport and urban issues, and we also work on sort of larger issues. We've done submission to the government as part of the consultation on the climate target. We've currently got our delegation is currently in Paris for the climate talks, and what we do is we seek to represent the youth voice, who are the people who are going to inherit the future. Our membership at the moment is, well, we've had an engagement with about 20 to 30,000 people, so that's online engagement, and they've supported us. And if we want to take our Facebook page, that's got 10,000 people, and that's a pretty good mobilisation of youth by any sense, especially for such sort of political issues.
And is that 10,000, that's a national
It's national
representation?
National representation.
Okay. How about in Hamilton or in the Waikato, how many people would you say would be members of your, or affiliated to the Generation Zero group?
Certainly in terms of people who have supported us, I don't have the numbers offhand, I'd have to check, but we have, well, recently we submitted on the City Centre Transformation Plan and we gathered 88 submissions, and when we submitted on the long-term plan we had 300 submissions, so you can take from that and say that perhaps the number is it's over 300.
And you submitted on the bike plan as well, and that was 270 something.
Yes. Yeah, okay. So we have a few hundred at least, but because of the nature of our organisation, I mean, you don't pay membership fees. We don't have that sort of things. It's a pretty new model of activism.
Thanks.
Right, thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you. That's public forum over. Right, we'll now move on to item 5, the Chair's report on page 5. And my apologies, I've just reread it and I didn't put a recommendation that the report be received. I just wanted to touch on the year. It has been a really busy year for the committee, and I thank Your Worship and councillors and, of course, support staff. We've done a lot of work. I think this committee is the workhorse of council, and in particular I want to thank those elected members and external members that have helped on the many working groups, and we have had a substantial amount of working groups reviewing policies and working on plans, so thank you to those people that have contributed. And also, of course, Aaron Fleming, who has been with us for 8 years, he's over the back there. Aaron's worked on a lot of policies, particularly some of the reviews and some of the big policies, and of course close to my heart, the psychoactive substances policy, which gave me and several other members around the table lots of sleepless nights, and I'm sure it did you as well, Aaron. So look, I want to thank you very much for your work and for your 8 years, and wish you all the very best for your future, so thank you. So with that, I will... there's just one other thing I wanted to comment on. At the start of the triennial, certainly it was my aim when looking at the work the committee was going to do, to set about trying to have a book of policies so that the new council coming in very early saw where the organisation was with policies, and that they could decide and debate early on in their term where their priorities lie. And I think we are definitely working towards that. So again, thank you, committee members, for your work and tolerance in that process. We are at the end, nearly at the end of that, and there is a report further in the agenda that speaks to the work that we've done there. I think it's good governance that a new incoming council for next year is able to look at a book of policies and decide where they want to position themselves, and that will be part of debate for a meeting for them. And I think in reflection, looking back on certainly my 2.5 terms now, sort of being on the treadmill of ever reviewing policies has been hard, and I think this is much better practice and better governance, and I believe was how it used to be done a long time ago. So I look forward to that coming to completion next year before elections, and that incoming council will hopefully benefit from our work. So thank you to the committee for that. The book.
It was a much bigger book.
It was a much bigger book. We'll have a much smaller book. So with that, I will, if there are any questions on my report, I will move my report be received. Is that a question, Councillor Miller?
Happy to second.
Oh, happy to second. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Is there any debate? All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, we move on to item 6, the open minutes. This is on page 8. I'll go to the Deputy Chair who chaired the meeting of the 3rd of November to present those minutes as a true and accurate record. Councillor King.
Is there a, I'll move. Is there a seconder?
Councillor Mallett will second. Is there any debate? No, that's being. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor King. And Councillor King, your reconvened meeting of the 5th of November. Would you like to?
Yeah, I'll move.
Oh, sorry, hang on. So he doesn't have to move. Is that right? It's the same. Sorry, democracy?
It's part of the same meeting, Madam Chair, so it's one set of minutes, the
Okay.
meeting reconvened.
Oh, meeting reconvened. Okay, all right. So thank you. So the other 5th of November meeting. What page is that on?
22.
22, 29? 29. So this is the gambling policies. So are there any questions on the minutes? Otherwise, I will move that they are a true and accurate record. Seconded by Councillor Tooman. Thank you, Councillor. Any debate? All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, policy update, item 7, page 37. And I'll invite Julie Clausen down. Are there any members, Julie, that you haven't met yet?
No.
You've met everyone?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. All right, Julie, you can take the report as read, and thank you for the update. So, are there any questions from elected members? We've had a regular update to this committee since we started in 2013. Thank you, Councillor Wilson has moved.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Forsyth. Is there any debate? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? That's carried. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Right, now, as requested, we're moving on to item 8, page 45. This is unfortunately not worked out. Councillor Gallagher last time requested that this item be brought forward so he could participate in more discussion, and unfortunately he's not here, so I'm sure he's with us in spirit. Hi, Chris. Chris, you can take the report as read. Committee members, are there any questions? And also, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, I've got a question, page 47, Chris. Paragraphs 27 and 30, just reading those two sets of bullet points there, looking at the very first bullet point under each number, in the 27 it says that the objective is for customers and simple to administer in terms of the fares, and then on 30, first point is distance-based fares to replace the current flat fare. Now, they would seem to me to be a total contradiction of each other. A flat fare has always been accepted as being the simplest and easiest to manage. Whether it's right or not is another point, I suppose, but at least it's simple and fair, and here's a look at moving in the opposite direction. So can you explain the inconsistency in thinking between the participants of that discussion?
Yep, so I think on paragraph 30, the options were the issues that were identified through the workshops for consideration to go into the fare review. So they're coming back in April to the joint committee, and there'll be another workshop there where the team come back and report, how a distance-based fare might work and how it might be tested against that simple for customers and simple to administer. I think the thing that they were grappling with was the data they had that showed that the fares in the inner city were probably more expensive than using a car. So they were looking to just look at a zonal scheme to see how that might work, which might more equitably reflect the actual cost of travel. But it was just the notion that it's got to be brought back to the joint committee in April, where they'll test against those objectives which are in number 27.
So, okay, is there going to be a discussion in this council, because clearly it's this city that would be affected if there was a change in there, where, I mean, there are already different fares if you're coming in from Narrawahia or Huntly or Cambridge or whatever to within the city. So it's within the city we're talking about, I presume?
It's predominantly within the city. So
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
So council were invited to the joint committee at the last meeting we had. So we had a workshop at the end of the joint committee to just put all the ideas in. That's where the items in paragraph 30 came out. And I'm sure there'll be another workshop at the joint committee, and it was targeted specifically for Hamilton City councillors to come along and participate in the debate, I guess, and the feedback from all of those different points. So we'll give you plenty of
But not a decision-making meeting?
The last one was the meeting broke, and then it was a workshop format to talk about it. The language, I think, in the minutes was another workshop in April. I'll just have to check that, but my anticipation would be a workshop format.
Any zonal fare system involves itself unforeseen circumstances, like someone on one side of the street paying more from their bus stop than someone 2 houses away, for instance. You know, that's a bit extreme, but there's certainly, it's totally arbitrary that whenever you have boundaries, isn't there?
Yeah. I think that's what will get tested when it comes back in April. You know, the Waikato Regional Council team is going away to provide more information, then come back in April to what a zonal system might look like, what benefits would have, and they'll test each of the things against those objectives in paragraph 27 there.
And they'll cover the extra administration costs involved in a multiple fare system?
I expect they'll take all of that into account in a business case type approach to it.
But our council staff who are attending will ensure that they do? They'll test against that themselves, or will you just be relying on the regional council? No,
our staff will work with regional council staff leading up to the joint committee in April. So, yep.
But you'll take note of our views specially, won't you?
I'll take note of the comments I've heard in the meeting today, Mr. McPherson. Yep.
Well, it's not just me, but I mean, it's an issue that's actually, that particular issue's been quite hotly debated in previous times around this table.
Look, it's probably one of the bigger issues in the fare review, whether it did move away from the flat fare. You know, some of the notions are looking at maybe a free zone in the CBD for all buses radiating out of CBD. It's free to jump on the buses in a tight CBD cordon. So that might have some attractiveness too in terms of vitality to the CBD. So there's a number of options that they are bringing back for consideration.
I'll look forward to them coming back to this table.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett, can I just remind members and down in that chair, please use your microphones. Thank you.
Can I go?
Oh, sorry, I said Councillor Mallett.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Point 12 on page 46, the purpose of the project is to prove the speed management process. What does that mean, to prove? Does that mean to test it?
Yeah, so Waikato's been chosen as a demonstration project. So a technical team has gone away at a national level and developed a new speed guide.
Yep.
And they want to test it in a real live situation.
Oh,
so
okay.
they're coming to the Waikato. They're doing all the data collection for the Waikato and all the authorities in the Waikato to then test the procedures and see whether they make sense and whether they work.
Okay, thank you. Same page, paragraph 19, second bullet point, and just this is kind of a high-level question. It talks about international changes to the size of ships, moving around the world will have an impact on the way freight is distributed. What will be the impacts of those things? My understanding is that shipping's in a crisis at the moment.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, I wasn't at that presentation, but I imagine it might be the size of the ships and the. Pardon, Robin? Robin was at the meeting, so she might be able to.
So the discussion was around the fact that ships are going to get bigger and probably have fewer coming to New Zealand, and that there are going to be a select few ports that are going to be deep enough to take those bigger ships. So we're more likely to see large amounts of freight coming into, say, 2 or 3 key locations in New Zealand, and then having to look at how you distribute that around the country. And that's when you then look at, is it coastal shipping, trucks or rail that do that distribution throughout the country. And then I guess there's also the export component as well. So it's not only import, but also the export component.
So you're hoping like Heck Tauranga is deep enough, and then we're hoping like Heck it comes to Hamilton somehow.
Tauranga is one that's certainly been setting itself
And
up
they're doing
for
that now, yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, okay. And you then talk about 2 bullet points down, the Ruakura Inland Port will be a good example. So that just follows on, I suppose, from what you just talked about, is that right?
Yes, it becomes a distribution hub, so potentially really good rail linkage to get it from Tauranga or even Auckland,
Okay.
and then the ability to put it on trucks and go by road if you need to from there.
So Ruakura isn't done yet and isn't even certain to be done yet, is it? So we're not premising too much on...
No, I think it was used as an example in the presentation by the various parties that came along.
Okay.
To
So it's a
basically
hypothetical?
saying, yes.
Yep, okay, thank you. Page 48, paragraph 39, talks about 10, and I just don't quite understand what this means. 10 school bus services currently provided by the Ministry have been identified by the Ministry of Education as having suitable public transport services available catering for students. Does that mean there are 10 school bus services which are duplicated by public bus services? Correct. So does that mean there's some redundancy?
Correct. But that's the Ministry of Education's view, that they don't need to put on a special service because there's an appropriate public transport service. So that's their view, and that's the issue that's being debated.
So they are saying hey, there's no point us doing this. You guys are doing it, and your buses can't have the capacity to do it.
Well,
So,
that's the issue.
And do we agree with that?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're looking to exit the service, but will we have the capacity? And that's the issue at the time of day when you're transporting students. It does put a lot of strain on the public transport system. So the answer is no, we don't 100% agree with that, and there are you can see it's merging into some more national discussions with regional councils grouping together and talking to MOE on it. So it is a work in progress.
Okay, so we'll get more back on this, won't we?
Yeah, it's certainly something that's discussed every public transport meeting and an update of where they're at. Okay. So at the point in time that MOE haven't removed the services, I don't think, Margaret, but it's their policy position to remove them. Okay. But they haven't removed them.
So then we go down to paragraph 44, which talks about the Waikato Regional Council will be issuing requests for tenders early 2016. First of all, decisions like the matter we just finished talking about will obviously need to have been made in order for any sensible tender to go out. So if someone's tendering on something, knowing that they have got that there are 10 school bus services that could be in competition, or 10 school bus services that are being pulled, and that's, I assume, custom for the people putting in the tender.
Look, this is probably just my opinion, and the answer is sort of similar to another question that I asked and answer I got. I think the flexibility is in the tenders to deal with changes like that once the contract's let. So I don't think it's critical to awarding the tenders and getting a supplier on board. I think it's a public transport system is going to change and grow over the life of the contract. So I think that flexibility would be within the administration of the contract to do. I think
from a ratepayer's point of view, though, you'd want to have the security that the risk is not going to fall on the ratepayer if suddenly a whole lot of school children who were presumably paying a fare, some part of a fare anyway, are now not jumping or are jumping on the public buses. If they're jumping on the public buses could perhaps be over full. If they're not on the public bus, there's a source of revenue that the tenderer, the successful tenderer, will presumably say, hey, can you make up for this? Or it's there's a potentiality that the winning tenderer could come back and start not suing us, but
I think the scale of the change is probably such that it can be done by just administering the contract. Like, these contracts are long-term contracts, and bus routes will change over the life of the contract. So, look, I'm surmising a little bit here, but there'll be mechanisms in the contract to deal with changes.
Okay.
So I don't think that they would see that as a really significant one, that they had to have an answer before they went out to tender. In actual fact, the answer is they have to go out to tender now to meet their timetables, and we don't have an answer on the MRE one. So they might try and put some scenarios in the tender document to deal with that, but it's regional council's business, and I'm not quite sure of the answer there.
Okay. I mean, it just concerns me that, from a cynical point of view that I generally have, it's very easy for the ratepayer to be seen as, oh, well, we'll just grab a bit more out of the ratepayer and just keep it quiet.
I think you can be assured that the joint committee, including our two members, are very strong on that point and trying to get a good outcome for the Hamilton City ratepayers.
Thank you. Okay, and the last one, not last one, 44, just how long are the tenders? Point 44 talks about going out to request for tenders, blah, blah, blah. How long are the tenders generally?
Look, 10 years springs to mind.
7 years before, have they gone up to 10?
7. I'll just quickly... So, Councillor Forsyth, can you remember?
I thought it was about 10 years.
Yeah.
Just on the tender dates due to be renewed, and how that affects or has something to do with the school bus services. I mean, that issue has been ongoing for over 12 months, and I don't know whether or when we're going to have a solution to that. That could very well be another 12 months, and in the meantime we have tenders and contracts that are due to expire and do need to be renewed. So certainly that's a consideration, but we need to move forward with the contracts and can't necessarily hang around and wait for the MOE decision, because that could take another 12 months.
Okay. I guess that is a factor that somehow needs to be tried. I mean, the ideal situation is to get have that knowledge at the time the contracts are entered into, and then both sides of the party know what how long the piece of string is, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Just one more, and it's just a bit of, can you explain, paragraph 51 on page 49 talks about service performance update, and then I think it looks at some, I'm not sure what those things are. It says some percentages of some things. I'm not too sure if they're targets or what they are. Anyway, then we go over to page 50, and there's a grid there, and there's a few routes, and then it talks about lows of 30% and fare box recoveries of 38%. Can you just explain what that's teaching us?
So the new public transport plan has some triggers in it to go and look at underperforming bus routes. So if they're underperforming in terms of the number of people on it, and that's the peak utilisation of seat capacity, if it's getting below 40%, that's a trigger under the new plan to say, whoops, this is needs a good look at to find out why that's happening and whether it's an economic service or whether we could reroute it or do something different to get the patronage up. So it's a new mechanism to drive efficiency into the public transport system in terms of looking at low performing routes.
Will these triggers be within the contracts?
The triggers are really within the public transport plan. Are there incentives in the contract to drive patronage? I'm just not sure of the answer to that, if that's your question. Like, will the operator be incentivised to drive patronage? The new contracts are a lot more of a partnership model between regional council and the operators to do some things like that. I'm just not 100% sure on that particular issue.
Okay. I guess my concern about this is that we've all got eyes around the council, and we've all seen empty buses going around town and wondering how many more empty buses am I going to see, or virtually empty buses. And you're sort of wondering, is that bus just there because it's part of the route that was contracted 10 years ago, and come hell or high water, that empty bus will go around town? Robin's shaking her head, but I still see lots of empty buses, and I never see them. I see very few full buses, a heck of a lot of empty buses, and I keep thinking, Waikato Regional Council's paying for these, collecting the money from Hamilton City ratepayers. And And I just wonder to what extent are buses driving around, burning up petrol, leaving a huge carbon footprint, which concerns the hell out of me, to no point at all. And you know, if it was a real business and people honestly were making money out of it or losing money out of it, that would be gone in a minute. You know, there would be immediately, you'd be looking at it within a week, you'd make a decision, no, that'll go from a big bus to a mini bus, or no, we're not doing it at all, we'll change the thing, we'll do some more advertising, we'll do something. But because we're spending other people's money and because there's no one ever gets tested on these things and no one ever gets checked up, there's no performance, well, there probably are performance targets, but we don't react to them.
You've answered your own question there, Councillor. So look, we are moving into a new era where they are being tested. So like, that didn't happen under the last public.
This is a new.
So this is a new plan which is driving the bus service to a more demand side than
Chris,
supply
was
side.
the last council told that as well?
No, because this is a new.
And the council that
Moving
voted
on.
for the V8s, they were told this
Moving
will
on.
work, and the council that was.
Moving on.
But I guess just another answer to the question, if you look at those lowest performing buses, they're not empty in the peak time. So you might see some empty buses maybe in the non-peak time, but a public transport service is about a regular service as well, and peak time is important to the city. So if you look at those buses which have been targeted, some of them have been, you know, they're about 30% sort of full, so they're not empty. So those are if they were zero, you'd see them turning up on here, but at peak time, those buses, you know, the lowest performing ones are 30% full. You look at the Orbiter at 118%. So there's some very successful services in here. The Northern Cadet.
But that's a free one, isn't it?
Three.
Orbiter?
No, the Orbiter.
Isn't that the free one?
No, the City Shuttle is the free one, and that's
Ages.
Okay.
58%. So that's quite high patronage on that one as well.
Okay, before I go to Councillor McPherson, can I just clarify on on point 39, I'm assuming it's the ministry that I've identified that there's only 3 schools, there's 10 bus routes, the 10 bus services that they've identified are only going to those 3 schools, is that correct? That's how it reads.
Is that
right?
10 nationally and 3 in Hamilton?
Oh, no, they're the numbers for in the Waikato region.
But they're all going to those 3 schools?
Those 3 schools, yes.
So we've got 10...
You've got people coming from, say, Matamata or Te Ao Mutu and those
okay.
sorts of things that are getting on buses and coming
Okay,
to those locations.
so 10 bus services that come, some of them outside the region into the city are servicing those 3 schools. Are those? I should know this, I don't have children. Are those 3 schools all private schools?
All integrated, Dio, St John's.
Oh, okay.
All 3 are integrated schools.
Okay, and I think I've picked this up from Councillor Mallett's questions. So, am I correct in forming the opinion that the Ministry of Ed doesn't take capacity on those routes into account when in their criteria?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor McPherson.
Yes, I was going to suggest to Councillor Mallett that perhaps he could get up a bit earlier and drive his kids to Southall School, and he'll see the Orbiter's totally full, 118% full on the route outside the school there. And the problem is that you have to be able to deal with the maximum requirements, and that means that off peak, those people aren't going to and from school. The real problem is the school times, and it's especially the schools along Peachgrove Road there. And you'll see 3 or 4 completely full buses in a row there, and they're caught in the traffic as well. So it's quite an issue, and it can only be solved by having large buses to cater for that. And what do you do in the off-peak time? Have a second small bus? That's the quandary that the planners have been in for many years. I might say this hasn't been going on for 12 months. It's been going on for at least 12 years, this problem with the Ministry of Education. So I think your contracts should ignore that possibility. You have to, really, and go ahead. But there have been other reasons, and this is the question I want to ask, other reasons that we've decided we want to change contract partway through. How flexible are the new contracts so they can actually be changed according to circumstances and not have to have 3-4 year lead times, which is what we've had before. You know, whenever you do that and you find a new suburb, we were told for a while we couldn't put buses into parts of Rototuna, new suburb, because there was no contract for them, which was nuts. There were thousands of people living there by the time we were able to put buses in there. So that we have to be much more nimble. So they have to write contracts that allow for that possibility, that whether it's because the ministry drops its funding or changes its funding, or whether it's because the city grows or a new factory set up, we have to, you know, Hamilton's bus services have to take that into account. Sometimes it seemed like the regional council and our planning and building sort of inspectorate staff aren't on the same page. So I'm interested in your comments on whether the contracts are going to be more flexible and there's better links in terms of forward planning.
Yeah, I'd only be making it up if I answered that, so I'd have to defer to regional council on that, but I will do that. I understand the point. And I'll get some information back to councillors. Are they more agile in terms of being able to more easily implement changes to the bus network, I think is your question.
That's an important point, because I can recall about 6 or 7 years ago when the last lot of contracts were signed, and within a couple of years in some cases were looking like they were going to be out of date, that we had a promise from the regional council that the future contracts would be flexible to the extent that, you know, you didn't have to wait until the end of the contract to change without massive penalties.
Look, I think that's probably the answer, because the new contract forms that have been rolled out around the country, which are a lot more alliance sort of type contracts or partnership models between the operators and the regional councils. So I think the answer is probably yes, they are more nimble, but I will check that and I'll come back with an email on that.
Right, thank you. I think we've had really good questions and discussion on this report, and it is again a shame that Councillor Gallagher. Yep, I haven't finished yet. Councillor Gallagher hasn't been here. I'm going to go to Councillor Forsyth and then to her and to Councillor Tooman, because you both sit on the Joint Transport Committee, and Councillor Tooman, your Civil Defence, for closing comments. I thought you were waving for Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Forsyth?
Yeah, look, it's not actually a question. I was just going to add a comment about...
Sure, yeah, questions or comments, fine.
The contract process, as I understand, because we have asked those same questions previously. Why don't you put a smaller bus on those off-peak times? And the reason that happens is because, from the answers that I got, is that the bus company would then have to purchase another smaller bus to take on that route. So if we wanted to have that kind of flexibility with a big bus and a small bus for the same route, in my mind there would be a cost, because whether the cost comes out at the front end of the contract or the cost comes out at another end through the users of the services, then that cost is still going to be there. The new fleets that are coming through are all accessible as well, and that means that the contractors have to go out and buy new buses. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is, no matter what we ask for or what we want, whether it's flexibility or certainty or whatever, somebody has to pay for it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Look, it was a question to Chris around the northern suburbs bus service improvements, and it's not acknowledged the lack of public transport services in our growth area, and that there's now a revised network, but it's taking 2 years to implement. And I'm just wondering if you are satisfied that the early interim improvements to commence in January will actually address the services that we're having to wait for 2 years. I'd just like a little understanding around that.
Yep, so so some interim improvements going in this January, so immediately after Christmas. There is a route map that shows where that bus will go. I think it's a peak time service only for the interim period. But the route map I could distribute to councillors to show where the bus stops are going to be. They've been over the last few months. They've been talking to all the residents along the route and making some slight changes about where bus stops and stations are. But it's got quite a good coverage. But it is peak time services only until the new contracts roll in. So it's an interim arrangement they've put in place to try and get a bus service operating at the morning and the afternoon peak times.
So if the interim services in January were not actually meeting the existing market out there, would there be some way to reconsider the 2-year plan to extend further?
Yeah. So, look, I think the answer to that is yes, because the the new contracts for the Hamilton Urban 2, they call it, which is the eastern side, is probably due to start in January 2018. So, so probably a year or two later. So I think there'd be a period of proving that they could adjust to any lessons they learnt through the interim trial service.
And the final one, Chair, relates to item 30, which Councillor McPherson has already commented on. I just wonder whether removing the 60-plus fare concession and reducing the child discount will actually end up reducing demand on the buses, as we've seen previously when fares have gone up, the use of buses has gone down.
So that's all the type of information that we expect Council will bring back to the April workshop to look at some of that elasticity or whatever they call it to try and anticipate what might happen if they do some of these things.
Seems a bit mean.
They're ideas that have come out of the workshop just to test, so they're not decisions, they're just things to test.
Okay, thank you. And last questions, Councillor King, or comments at this point?
The demonstration project for the regional speed management, paragraphs 9 to 15.
What about it?
Are we committed to this demonstration project?
Yep, the Waikato is committed to the demonstration project, so it's been run out of the Regional Transport Committee. So we have the opportunity to test it ahead of everyone else in the country, but it will be rolled out in the country and it will eventually lead to changes to legislation in terms of the speed limit rule.
So is that committee delegated to commit this council to altering speed limits in our city?
No. So the decision to alter speed limits will always come back to this council.
So being a part of this demonstration project
does not commit us to changing speed limits.
What's it going to cost?
Well, it depends if we want to change speed limits. So this piece of work initially is looking at how that guide, what the recommendations from that guide are and what would be the impact. And then it's looking for targeting to risk, where would you first implement on a regional basis changes? And they are likely to be in the higher speed areas rather than in urban areas. But each of the councils will have an opportunity to opt in and out each time. So the demonstration project is only looking for 5 or 6 speed limit changes probably next calendar year. And that will be all part of the learning that then carries on from there. So we're just in the very early stages of trying to determine which are likely to be those locations, but it's only 6 to 8 sites throughout the Waikato region.
So if I can just add to that, councillors might recall the briefing we had on it. The first part of the project is about gathering evidence and data, and NZTA are paying for all of that. So they're going to run all the data sets for the whole of the region, and then it'll come, and that data sets will show any gaps in between what the guide says are the desirable speeds, what the actual speeds are, overlain with the risk profile, and it'll just come to us as council to say what the data is throwing up for us to sense test, I guess, the data, and does it make sense to us? So there's no actual cost involved, I think, as Robin has said, until this council decides that they want to move forward, as would be any case for moving forward on a speed change. If you want to move forward with a speed change, I'm picking that we'd have the opportunity to look at the data, and maybe there's one or two sites that we want to pick as test case to see what that would mean if we put a Dinsdale Road or Mill Street through, or some sort of street in the city. But our suggestion is let's wait for the data and see what the data says, and then we'll bring that back to council. And I think there's a workshop somewhere early in the new year where we can look at the data and see what it says for the city. We don't know what the data will say at the moment, or how good the data is and how sensible it is. But there's no cost implications apart from staff and councillor input to the processes going on at the moment.
So what committee has committed us to be part of this project? I see in paragraph 2 there's several committees that we're talking about today.
So the project has been run by the Regional Transport Committee. So it's been run as a regional project. We have members on the Regional Transport Committee. So Councillor Tooman is the chair of the speed demonstration project. But I just reiterate, it's not actually committing us to anything at this stage. It's just been part of the demonstration process.
Yeah, but these things start small and end up big. What is that committee have delegation to commit us to be a part of a project? That's where I'm heading. Or should this council be making that decision? And I know that it's slipping in here as a paper for us to vote on today, so it becomes part of our decision by default, but how did this all start? How did this council commit to being a part of a demonstration project?
So look, I just go back to the decision was made at around the Regional Transport Committee.
I mean, is it within the delegation? Was within the delegation of that committee to commit this council to something that?
I'm not sure that council is committed to anything at the moment. So all the data sets have been run by NZTA and paid for by NZTA. We'll have the opportunity to look at those data sets and decide whether we want to have any of our streets in a demonstration project moving forward. My suggestion, recommendation would be good to stay part of it, because it is going to, whether we participate or not, it's going to result in changes to the speed law, which this council might want to have a view on. So I would have thought at a point in time, if council wanted to nominate a project to be in there, that might be a decision of council. But at this point in time, I don't see it as you're committing council to anything.
Chris, is there a way where, before we are actually in this project, that it can come back to this committee with a little bit more detail so the committee can then make the decision, or is it under your delegated authority as GM?
So I think for an issue like this, that for council to put projects in to be demonstration projects, I think that should be a council decision and not a staff decision. So I expect that we would bring that back. But the project plan they've got has got a number of workshops programmed. The first one that I'm looking at is March, when we're going to be visited and we're going to be introduced to the technical data. They're going to put up the technical data and show us what it means, and that's part of the sense testing process that they're talking about. So I guess it's at that point in time that council would potentially start making some decisions about whether they wanted to have some streets in the projects to move forward to be properly tested against.
So, sorry, that's at a briefing. You're saying that that's
So at the moment, it's just a regional council project plan,
All right.
and they talk about RCAs visited. So I guess
Yeah.
that's up to us to
Okay.
determine how we'd want to receive
But,
that
but,
visit.
but what I raised is something that if a member of the committee wanted to put into a resolution today, they could do that. There-
Put into a resolution to what effect?
To bring back more detail and then have that, this committee then have the decision to either commit or not commit to this.
So,
Project.
in order to make any changes, we'd have to work through the speed limits bylaw, and we'd have
Yeah.
to go through the bylaw
Yeah.
process. So we would have to get a resolution from this committee
Yeah.
to make any
Okay.
commitments.
A trial. So if we participate in this project as a demonstration trial project, whatever, we have to address the bylaw.
It's still just making a speed limit change, so we'd still have to go through the same legal process.
We still have to address
change
the
speed
bylaw,
limit.
which is full SCP, etc.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, well, thank you.
Sorry, I had one more question
Yeah.
arising out of the Deputy Mayor's point.
Yeah.
Very good point on the northern suburbs bus service
Yeah.
improvement. I'm interested in what's not said here. What's not said is a major new high school starting out in the northern suburbs next year, a junior school, and then for the year 9, and then year 9 and 10 the following year. So it's going to experience of all schools out there. It's going to be full to capacity before it's even half built. The others all have been, and that's one of our major objectives, is to have buses there as an option from day one. Is this going to fill that need, and is it going to grow over the 2 years with the school growing, because the school's not staying static? The 200 or 300 it'll have at the start of next year will be double that the following year and double that the year after, without exaggeration.
We asked that question at the joint committee, so they're certainly are consulting and talking to the schools about appropriate bus stops to service the schools. I think my broader issue is just the roading network out at the schools. So the school's going to open, and as Councillor knows, we're working in partnership with the MOE to provide some roads to service the schools. But the full roading network out there to support a growing role is in the hands of MOE and the developer out there in terms of private land and roads. So I think the bus service will be as good as the road network allows to service the schools out there. So in terms of bus service, they tell us they've had very productive discussions with the school about where they're going to, bus stops and everything are going to be located in the interim service.
It's sort of an interesting answer that you're saying it's in the hands of the MOE and the developer on the roading services. Are we not the regulatory authority that says when buildings can happen and be used, and that there have to be proper transport arrangements in place, usually before major organisations start?
Yep, and that's why I tagged it to a growing role, because my understanding, the designation conditions the MOE have got give them consent, I guess, to grow the school to a certain role using the road network that's been built at the moment and we're participating in. But if they want to grow beyond a certain roll number, there's more roads required, and those roads are the business of private developers and the MOE to build. So we're working really closely with both of those parties to try and get a bit of coordination going and anticipate the school is going to grow pretty quickly and the role's going to hit that trigger point of 1,600 pupils or something like that before another collector road network needs to be in place. So
what are we doing to ensure? I mean, can't we mandate that, being the controlling authority, not road controlling, but the controlling in terms of consents? Can't we say you shall not grow until you have
that's exactly what the condition says. They can't grow until the roads are in place. So certainly MOE's incentivised, but they're reliant on working with the local developer. And look, at this point in time, the collaboration and coordination is looking good. So we're in there trying to work with them. Councillors might recall that one of the projects we're looking at is the Borman Road East Extension. So we need to do that in conjunction with the developer to build his road, so it all comes together at the same time. So at this point in time, it's looking like that part will come together. But
And EW, I mean, Regional Council, whatever they call themselves this year, going to have the buses on board growing at the same time. Is that what you're also assured about?
look, I think
Should be a four-way partnership, really, shouldn't it?
Yeah, the interim services are for this point in time, and when the new services come on, I'm just not sure how they might change and adapt to reflect a changed roading layout. But all I can say is there appears to be really good discussions going with the schools and regional council on the bus services at the moment.
Madam Chair, can this issue come back in a few months to see how that's progressing once the school started and the first buses have been operating?
This report is on a regular two cycle, so no, it's every quarter.
Yeah.
So I can expect the next report. You can get an update on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Right, lastly, Councillor Forsyth.
I was just going to move.
Okay, I just wanted to go to Councillor Tooman. Did you have anything to add since you sit on
Yes,
these committees?
I feel I have to, as chair of the speed demonstration project here in Waikato. Central government, of course, they've embarked on what they call Safer Journeys, which is a road safety campaign to see us into the future. Part of that, of course, is safer roads, safer vehicles, which I presume Councillor King is well involved in the supply of these safer vehicles, safer speeds and safer road users. I think the Waikato region is the one who has the highest fatal rate of any other regional council within New Zealand. And as part of that, of course, when we look as to what is a safe speed, it's really looking for what is the safe speed for that particular environment. And I think most people here will be aware of the coast road up the from Thames up to Coromandel, which is 100 kilometres per hour. And anybody who has driven that road will know that that's a totally inappropriate speed to travel at. So what we really need to do is to look at the various roads throughout the Waikato, and currently, of course, NZTA have taken it on board to fund the trial whereby Aberleys and Wellington are looking at all the data collection as to what is the crash rate on that particular road, what are the roadside environments, so that we can come up with an appropriate speed for that particular environment. There is no commitment at all from Hamilton City Council here to change any speed limits at all. And as Robin suggested, it will probably only be 7 or 8 within the Waikato region, which would possibly be changed. And that will only be for a demonstration project, and then that'll, of course, eventually filter right down through the rest of the country. It's not only sort of about slowing speeds down, but also increasing speeds. And here, for example, on the expressway, I asked myself whether or not 100 kilometres per hour is appropriate, or maybe it should be even higher. But until such time as we can get a change within central government as to, because at the current time, 100k is the absolute maximum, and we have to have central government change that. Let's not get too nervous about it. I think we must all remember that road safety is everybody's responsibility. And if everybody within our community can just say, yeah, it is my responsibility, then I think we're going to be in a far better space. As far as I'd just like to comment on the civil defence issue. There was to be an all-hazard centre which was going to be built somewhere in Hamilton here, or in the Waikato somewhere, involving police, fire and civil defence and ambulance. That is now sort of, with the review of the New Zealand Fire Service, the police have not committed to it, ambulance has not committed to it, and now, of course, the Fire Service, with their review, that'll be 5 or 6 years away. So at this stage, of course, that's really not a goer, and I think what will happen is possibly the Waikato Regional Civil Defence will probably look for new premises and leave it at that. Did you want to mention that other part there, or not at this point in time?
I think what I would just say at the moment is we're exploring opportunities for further closer collaboration with the group office, and we'll update that through the subcommittee through Councillor Tooman.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, is that Kelvin Powell, who's the City Safe Manager, now is the Deputy City Controller, or Assistant City Controller, in lieu of Ollie, who has now moved on.
Great, thank you, councillor. So that's been, look, we've had discussion and questions all mixed into one, and I think it's been really good. We've been discussing this item for 50 minutes, so councillor Gallagher will be very pleased with that and upset that he's missed it. So that's been moved by councillor Forsyth. Councillor Tooman, are you going to second that report? Thank you. All those in favour?
Could we debate this?
Well, we've had discussion and questions right throughout, councillor King, so I think we've done the report well, so I'm just going to put the vote now.
Well, point of order, I mean...
well, hang on. No, just hang on. Look, if you...
Well, you just overrode him then.
Well, no, I'm just making a comment as a chair. Look, if you really want to debate, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. So, councillor King? Councillor King?
It's a shame that this report isn't broken out so we can vote separately. I know it's only a report for information, but I feel that we've been committed to being part of this demonstration process, and I question the delegation and the way it's happened and whether that should have come before this council first. These things do cost, they will cost, even if it's only staff time to start with. It's the thin end of the wedge. We've been on the bleeding edge of the wedge before with the 40-kilometre-hour process. It became a very big election issue last election, and in fact most people in this room, when I was out campaigning, actually said that they would reverse the 40k back to 50 until they got voted in. It seems to be a common thread. Why should we...
Point of order, actually, that's not...
Sorry, what's your point of order?
Point of order, I mean, well, you did say most, so, and you didn't name names, but yeah, that wasn't my case.
Do you want to rule on that point of order?
Well, councillor Mallett, do you want to give me a chance to think for a second, and then I'm confused about the point of order, councillor.
Sorry, no, I was just testing the facts, but councillor King did say most people would change their mind. The point I was trying to make was that I never said that I would change my mind about that. I said I'd re-look at it, but I certainly wouldn't change my mind.
Okay, yeah, councillor King, it's not good to imply unless you're going to specifically name people. I don't. Otherwise, you're catching everyone, and that's
I'm
unfair.
happy to do that if you want me to.
Up to you.
Why should we be the guinea pigs? Why should we be out there putting ourselves forward? This isn't. This, as Councillor Turman said, this is a Greater Waikato issue. In Hamilton, I don't know whether we even have many 100k areas, and where they are 100k's, I think they're pretty dead straight roads, pretty good roads for doing 100k's on. So I'm just questioning the way that this has come up, the way that this has been put on us, and the way that this will build into a big project, even although it's starting as a small project, and I do question the costs that will eventually come through on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
My concern with this report is that, and Dave, my dear friend, Councillor McPherson, eloquently explained it by saying, well, you need big buses, so you just get big buses. If this was the private sector, I absolutely guarantee you
Point of order.
He didn't exactly say if you get big buses, you need big buses.
Sorry, Councillor
He didn't say anything like that. He didn't say anything like that.
Councillor McPherson, what's your point of order?
My point of order is that Councillor McPherson, Councillor Mallett's dear friend, did not say that we need big buses because we need big buses. He said we need big buses at peak times because of the petrol.
Yes, that is true. Councillor Mallett, you are wrong.
That's
Continue.
right. And well, he said it was almost like that. Anyway, I guarantee you in the public sector, when people were spending their own money, that we would not accept a policy which says we're going to have big buses on the road all the time, rather than there would be some sort, and I've got no idea how it worked, but it's the magic of the private sector when you're spending your own money. You would work some sort of vehicle sharing operation with a minibus operator or something like that, where the big buses would be out when they're required, the small buses would be out when they're required. You'd be way, way more flexible in your pricing. You'd be way, way more flexible in your route selection and changing. In fact, a classic example is the very new plane, regional airport outfit Kiwi Regional, they're changing their routes all the time because they're responding to the market. It's fantastic, and that's what you do when you're spending your money. It's not. You'll see a bus flying over very shortly. So, but that's exactly what happens, and unfortunately we get lulled into this position because we're spending other people's money, and the people whose money we're spending don't actually know where it's being spent, and they look at these empty buses and they went, oh, that's great, we've got a good bus service. Oh, geez, the rates have gone up a lot this year. There is no mechanism within this, and if there is, I apologise, but it hasn't been explained to me. There is no mechanism in this to try and create any degree of flexibility or any degree of economy within the thing to try and make sure that the ratepayer is getting more bang for the buck.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor McPherson, did you have your hand up?
No, it was just the point of order.
Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. That's being moved by Councillor Forsyth, seconded by Councillor Tooman. All those in favour? Are there any against? Councillor King is against. Councillor Mallett is against. Okay, thank you very much. We will break for 10 minutes for afternoon tea. Come back at 3.